Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. It's a beautiful Thursday morning in the nation's capital, and we hope that our viewers, are experiencing the same, especially the flood impacted area. I am Sunday Michael Ogo. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Hello, good morning and welcome. It is Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Just like Sunday said, it's a beautiful Thursday morning out there, and we hope that your day has gotten off to the brightest of starts. Sunday, I think the fuel scarcity issue is still...
It's one of the many lies that they told us recently. Well, it started with Lokoja being overflooded, and so we couldn't get supply. The waters have receded, people are passing, but the fuel is not passing.
The fuel is not there. The fuel is still not there.
And now we see that Lagos and Kano had caught up, and now the story is different. The depots are charging more than is expected, and people are saying if we take it at that price, we are not able to sell at the control price. They should have told us this over 4 weeks ago.
At least so that people can actually have time to prepare.
I mean, enough with the going
back
round and round. And I mean, this year can effectively be declared as the first scarcity year for us.
We've had how many now?
I mean,
in the space of
too many.
Exactly.
I think we have had longer fuel queues than we have had ASU strike.
That is quite unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. We move on to bring you the headlines this CBN to redesign 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes.
And BVAS will change face of 2023 elections, says an ex-Senate leader.
Court orders FG to return Nnamdi Kanu to Kenya.
And now the details. The Federal High Court in Umuahia, Abia, on Wednesday ordered the federal government to return Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, to Kenya. Delivering judgment, Justice Evelyn Anyadike also awarded Kanu 500 million naira in general damages. Kanu prayed the court to redress his infamous unlawful expulsion or extraordinary rendition from Kenya by the federal government. The court referred to the Court of Appeal's judgment on October 13th in Abuja and granted all the 8 reliefs sought by Kanu, which bordered on extraordinary rendition. The suit, which was filed in March, has the federal government, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, and President Muhammadu Buhari as respondents.
Moving on, a former leader of the Senate, Victor Udoma Egba, has thrown his weight behind the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, over its resolve to use the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, BVAS, and other technology during the conduct of the 2023 elections. Udoma Egba, who spoke in Abuja when members of the APC National Integrity Movement visited him at his residence, said the development would change the face of the 2023 general election, expressing confidence that the APC will emerge victorious. He added that the 2023 election will be different from the previous elections as technology will play a key role, saying people have become very aware and are going to be making very informed choices.
And the Central Bank of Nigeria on Wednesday says it will redesign the 200 naira, 500 naira and 1,000 naira notes. CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, who disclosed this during a special press briefing in Abuja, said the new design and issues will be effective December 15th, 2022. While advising Nigerians to take old notes to banks for the new notes, Emefiele said that the action was taken in order to take control of the currency in circulation. According to him, the bulk of the nation's currency notes was outside bank vaults, noting that the CBN will not allow the situation to continue. Emefiele informed that as of the end of September 2022, available data at the CBN indicated that 2.7 trillion naira out of the 3.3 trillion naira currency in circulation was outside the vault of commercial banks across the country and supposedly held by members of the public. Meanwhile, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has applauded the move by the central bank to redesign and reissue higher denominations of Nigerian currency, the naira. Reacting to the development, Executive Chairman of the EFCC, Abdulrashid Bawa, described the move by the Apex Bank as a well-considered and timely response to the challenge of currency management. He called on operators in the Nigerian financial services sector, especially deposit money banks, and the Bureau de Change operators to work within the guidelines provided by the Apex Bank to ensure the seamless withdrawal of the old currency. Bauer, however, warned that the EFCC will monitor the process to ensure that unscrupulous players and currency speculators and their cohorts among BDCs do not undermine the exercise.
Moving on to our packages, the spate of insecurity in northern part of the country has forced many schools to close and expose the adolescent population to social vices which negatively impact their development. Gender advocate at the 22nd Regular National Council on Women Affairs, who identified this as one of the major factors perpetuating the practice of early marriage, however, wants security and other safety measures to be put in place to encourage the girl child to return to school. Trust TV's Aisha Saliu reports.
The rising incidences of insurgency, kidnapping and banditry in the northern part of the country contribute to complex humanitarian crisis and have impeded the enrollment and retainment of the girl child in schools. This results in an increase in the number of out-of-school children. As such, parents send off their young female children into early marriage.
The educational status of a woman, of a girl, is what determines the economy of any country, not the number of buildings, because it affects maternal mortality, child mortality, the kind of nutrition, whether you give birth to children that can rule the country because they've been sound, they've been fed well. So a lot of things anchor on the girl child. And that girl child is also anchored on the level of her education. Until we have security and safety for schools of children, for children, it's going to be like almost the country is just going to go on a roller coaster.
Whatever we're doing, we had to ensure the security and well-being of these children because we don't want to lose them, to child marriage or, dropouts and so on, because we're also battling to see that, we keep our children in school.
Maybe one of those is fencing schools, having security guards, people that are looking out to see what is happening, even communities themselves.
This menace calls for the need for collaborative efforts on the part of traditional, religious, security institutions and community levels towards ensuring the provision of an enabling and safe environment for schools. The Development Research and Project Center, under the Partnership for Advancing Women Economic Development, initiated a program to cater for education in emergencies.
The traditional institution, they hold a strong voice. They're bridging gap between the parent, the community, government, and the service providers in ensuring they change the negative norms and perception, enroll more girl child into school, ensure convolution, transition to others so that we can bridge gap in the issue of human resource for health, girl child, human resource for health, and human resource for education.
We taught our pupil, the student, how to safeguard themselves whenever there is an attack. We tell them the early warning strategies for them to be alerted on their way going to school or on their way coming back to home, or even when they are in the school. How can they prevent themselves?
Stakeholders say advancing girl-child education is one of the best solutions to reverse the trend of rural poverty and create improved maternal health, among others. Aisha Salihu, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And to politics now, where the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, says it is insensitive for his party to engage in campaigns while some people's houses are underwater as a result of the recent floods in Nigeria. Now, Obi stated this in Bauchi State while interacting with support groups as part of his harmonization tour across Nigerian states. Trust TV's Adam Imam has details.
The presidential candidate again challenged other political parties in the country to suspend their campaigns as part of sympathy for the affected communities who lost their loved ones and properties worth billions of naira to floods.
The flooding this year is worse than it was in 2012. Yes. 2012 we lost only about 300 something people. This year already we lost 600 plus. And more damages. It's far worse. Houses are underwater. Yes. So we felt it would be insensitive for us to campaign. Rather, what we say is to visit as many people, many states as possible.
He He lamented that the federal government's effort in mitigating the issue of flooding in Nigeria is not enough and promised that he will address the situation if elected president.
First, I will do whatever is possible to mitigate against this by ensuring that we'll start a gradual dredging of River Niger and River Benue. If they are dredged and desilted, they'll be able to contain all this flood with their tributaries and will be more economical to the country. And even if the child were having problems, some water can be pushed into there. So we must find a solution.
Meanwhile, at the Emir's Palace in Bauchi, the candidates sought for royal blessing and also visited Sheikh Dahiru Usman Bauchi at his residence for prayers to succeed in the next year's presidential election. However, the Emir Dr. Luwani Suleiman Adamu explained that politicians should note that traditional rulers are always neutral in Nigerian politics.
The evidence is clear that democracy is our reverse process for acquiring legitimacy and governance in our country. As we embark on another round of election, one major concern is that of the maintenance of peace, law, and order. As a stakeholder in the process, it is necessary that you provide leadership in maintaining law and order among your supporters, so that the integrity of the process is preserved.
Obi urged supporters to conduct themselves peacefully during campaigns. Adam Imam, Trust TV News, Bauchi.
And now moving on to Benue State, residents have continued to react to the attack on Beji community by unknown invaders. The state has been under serious attack in recent times by yet to be identified invaders threatening the peaceful coexistence of the state and the country at large. Trust TV correspondent brings us the report.
The residents of Benue are worried that the security agencies are not doing enough to stop the killings that have made life unbearable in the state. Those who spoke to Trust TV said almost every day there are reported cases of attacks on farming communities. The latest was the killing of scores of people in Beji, in local government area of the state.
It's also disturbing the way the insecurity is turning out in Nigeria today. Every day people are being killed by unknown gunmen. But my problem is our security architecture in Nigeria. What are they doing? Because those people, they are not spirits. They came from somewhere, carried out the attacks, and go to somewhere.
The service chief, the security chiefs, they are not doing anything. We keep on hearing killing from one place to another, and nothing has been done. The perpetrators have yet to be punished. So to me, I see the government is yet to carry out its mandate. If you observe international communities, you hear about a particular minister resigning as a result of issues that are happening in the country.
Some of the residents said individual communities should form their security architecture to complement the federal government's efforts.
They should come together and set up security outfits in their localities. The federal government cannot be everywhere. We need to, at least in our own part, come together and then set up security outfits in our villages so that we can help or so that we can complement what the federal government is doing. So it is very, very important for us to rise up against this kind of inhuman situation.
Recently, the Benue State Governor Samuel Otom instituted the local community volunteer guard to complement the role of the regular security agencies. But the question is, are these local guards equipped and trained to tackle such security issues in communities?
And now to the economy, where many Nigerians have expressed displeasure over the current economic situation in the country, which experts attributed to poor economic policies and a high inflation rate. Now, the inflation rate, which has pushed prices of commodities in the market extra high, made it difficult for some Nigerians to cope. In this report, Trust TV's Kabir Lawal takes a look at the feeding ratio of average Nigerian families and how they are coping with the economic hardship.
The ugly sight of masses toiling under excruciating economic conditions and the rate at which poverty has eaten deep into the country is not only frightening but also heartbreaking. Many Nigerians, according to observers, cannot afford 3 square meals a day. Statistics available, however, reveal that over 70 million Nigerians are unemployed and thus have taken a toll in household welfare, pushing them into poverty. The story is not different in the Federal Capital Territory, as prices of food items have gone up, making it difficult for an average Nigerian to feed.
If you enter the market right now, something you can buy before, you can buy it like 15 naira. Now they'll be telling you 300, 500 and all that. So it's very difficult for poor people to come and be buying. That is why there is crime rates everywhere. You see people stealing.
More worrisome is that some families that spoke with Trust Television News said they sometimes sent their children street hawking instead of going to school to be able to put something on the table.
No, we are on Operation 101 now. Okay, because we have one in the morning, and that one in the morning will come from 11 or 11:30. By 12, you finish it up. Then from 12 till 7:30, you take the last one, and that will take you till the next morning again. When you wake up in the morning after brushing, you go out for a hustle again till 12 o'clock again. So that's why it's Operation 101.
Food vendors also said prices of food commodities have gone up beyond the reach of the common man.
The market price is very, very high. The thing that you buy today, tomorrow when you go to the market, the price will change. Look at Gary. We buy Gary. Last week, I buy 23,000. Now, you can see that the woman that bring Gary for me now, he said it's 25,000. One bag of Gary. If you buy rice, rice, everybody like rice. If they use pipe, this rice I'm talking about now, in Nigeria, everybody like rice.
For now, things are worse. Before, things are cheap. Like this crayfish, we do buy, like penta, we do buy penta 2,000, 2,500. But now, if you didn't have 5,000, 7,800, you can't buy it.
Experts have attributed various causes of the current inflation rate in the country to import restriction, rising fuel prices, floods, among others. It is hoped that the federal government will come up with policies that can avert the current situation. Until then, life remains difficult for the masses. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
That's the wrap on our report this morning. We'll take a short breather. When we return, we'll serve you the newspaper review. Please stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. So we're going to go straight into the newspaper headlines this morning, and we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. The major headline on the front page of Daily Trust: why CBN will redesign currency notes. That is the major story on the front page of the Daily Trust. And it comes with riders that says over 85% of currency in circulation is outside banks. EFCC commends initiative to clamp down on hoarders. Experts: corrupt politicians keep money in dollars. And decision good for economy. Now, these are the riders supporting the major headline. And of course, there's an infographic here of the timelines for all the currency redesigns that were done to the Naira. Petrol scarcity worsens in Lagos, Abuja, Kano as marketers blame depot price hike. Details of that on page 18. At the bottom of the front page there is a belt that has these stories. Return Kanu to Kenya, pay him 500 million naira damages, court orders federal government. And stay-at-home husband sues wife for not disclosing her salary. Details of that on page 16. We need 30 years of consistent investment to control flood, says minister. Details of that on page 25. And moving towards the top of the front page below the masthead, federal government says America also unsafe as U.S. orders evacuation of citizens from Nigeria. Details of that on page 25. National carrier government operators disagree over partnership with Ethiopian Airlines. And IDB expresses concern over high number of out-of-school children in the north. Details of that can be found on page 6. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
And moving on swiftly to the Nation's newspaper, it has the major headline: PDP crisis, Otom attacks Atiku as Mimiko rejects job. Setback for PDP presidential candidates in Benue. Ex-Ondo governor vows not to ditch Wike. Interesting developments there with one of the major opposition party. And moving on to other issues on the front page: court to Kogi, don't disrupt Dangote's operation. We thought we have heard the last of these incidents. And to other headlines, marketers raised petrol price to 179 from 169. No admission offer has been cancelled, says JAMB. You'll find that story on page 5. Online lotto casino orders to pay taxes directly to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Security alert, no reason for evacuation of U.S. citizens. That is coming from the federal government. And court dismisses suit seeking Abiodun's disqualifications. These are the stories, the major stories on the front pages of the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, next we take a look at the Punch newspaper, and it goes with a political headline. It says 2023 Lagos, Kaduna, Rivers, Kano voters to top INEC register. And it comes with riders here. It says 2.7 million illegal registrants deleted, 23 registration officers under sanction. And INEC to display register from November 12th to November 25th seeks cooperation. Going down the front page there, Buhari eyes over $1.3 billion trade with South Korea. And right at the bottom of the front page, NDLEA freezes 20 billion naira in socialites' 103 bank accounts. And tears as BRT vehicle kills trader, apprentice and labourer. Federal government announces preferred bidders for Abuja-Lagos airports. And going towards the top of the front page, beside the masthead, EFCC rearranges suspended AGF over 109 billion naira fraud. And at the very top of the front page, flooding, experts warn of epidemic as corpses float. And DSS arrests terror suspects. US evacuates non-emergency staff. CBN plans Naira redesign to counter counterfeiting and kidnapping. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning.
Moving on to This Nigeria, one of the newest additions to the newspaper family. The major headline here on the front page reads, Flood disaster death toll hit 612, says federal government. 2,776 persons injured, 123,807 houses completely damaged, over 1,427 million persons displaced, 392,399 farmland destroyed. Government earmarked 80 billion to fix damaged infrastructure. You would also find there on the front page pictures of the upgraded and rehabilitated Ebute Elefun fire station in Lagos Island by the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. And two other stories on the front page, debt, stop mortgaging future of Nigerians, Labour warns FG. NASO calls for probe of top military officials on oil theft. You'll find that story on page 5. And to other stories, Soludo reverses decision on tax payment by wheelbarrow pushers. Others, you'll find that story on page 10. These are the major stories on the front page of This Nigeria.
All right, the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is First News newspaper, and it carries this headline on the front page. Terror alert, U.S. moves to evacuate embassy staff, citizens from Abuja. And we have a rider here that says, warns, we have limited ability to provide emergency services to U.S. citizens in Nigeria. No cause for alarm. We won't be stampeded by U.S., UK terror alerts. Federal government reacts. It says security agencies on top of matter. Nigeria safe. Alerts evacuations aimed at embarrassing security agencies, says military sources. And don't trivialize terror alert, SDP, YPP warn federal government. Forgiving Osinbajo, says Tinubu. That is another headline on the front page of First News. And CBN to release redesigns Naira notes December 15th as Northern Group kicks opposes Apex Bank's plan. 2023, 9.93 million voters to decide Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, other candidates' fate, says INEC. And it comes with a rider here that says elections results will be transmitted electronically. Still talking 2023, we cannot work for Atiku in Benue, says Autumn. And it comes with a rider that says, you can't lie against me in public, beg for pardon in secret. And still talking politics, 2023 Wike Atiku feud will cost PDP presidency, says Adeyanju. And court adjourns suit seeking Ekweremadu's sack. And that is another headline on the front page of First News newspaper. Pivoting back to politics, Kwankwaso won't collapse campaign for anybody, says spokesperson, dismisses merger rumor. Olisametu resigns from PDP and partisan politics. Talking about the flood disaster, Bielsa's situation pathetic, says Governor Emmanuel. He donates 100 million naira to victims. Return Nnamdi Kanu to Kenya, pay him 500 million naira, court orders federal government. And Wike swears in ex-APC spokesman 17 others as new commissioners. Still on the front page of the First News newspaper, how Adamu withdrew 3 billion naira from APC's secret accounts illegally, says sacked directors. And at the very top of the front page there, online betting, FIRS begins tax deduction at transaction point, gives operators December 31st deadline. Now, these are the stories on the front page of the First News newspaper this morning.
We have the Nigerian News Direct Nest. And the major headline is staying with major development in the polity. Existing currency expiration. CBN's deadline shocks politicians, shatters 2023 election cash for vote plans. It will be interesting to see how that decision would impact the 2023 election. It has several riders which are similar to what you have taken on the front pages of other papers. And moving on to other report, terror alert, political economic activities suffer in Abuja as U.S. plans evacuation of citizens. Reconciliation of presidential aspirants. I have nothing against Oshibajo. I would work with others, says Tinubu. These the stories that are different from the ones we have looked at on the front pages of the Nigerian News Direct.
All right, next we will take a look at the Blueprint newspaper, and it comes with this headline on the front page. EFCC hails Apex Bank's move to tackle inflationary trends. And that is a story that's making rounds on all the papers this morning. Going down the front of the front page, towards the bottom, Lagos, FFS, Lasambus, Lasema, others save WAEC officials from inferno. And FFK to Obaseki, Atiku will destroy Nigeria, not Tinubu. And 21st National Sports Festival, Buhari flags off Torch of Unity. Court awards IPOB leader Kanu 500 million naira over arrests. And Buhari hails election of Nigeria's Owodumi in Canadian city. Dangote Refinery will transform downstream sector. That is another headline on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. Now, these are some of the stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper this morning.
And finally, we'll be looking at the Leadership newspaper this morning. The major headline there is staying with the move by the central bank to mop 3.2 trillion from circulation. But moving on to other interesting stories there on the front page. The Northeast Development Commission present relief materials to Bauchi flood victims. China honors 51 Nigerians for outstanding contribution. It will be interesting to see those who made this leave. IPAC, CSO reject salary increment for president, governors, and others. I think this is reacting to the news of plans by the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Planning Commissions to review salary of public office holders. PMB 6 expanded trade relations beyond gas exports. This is coming from his trip to South Korea. And of course, terror alert. We won't be stampeded, FG tells U.S. government. These are the major stories on the front page of Leadership newspaper. We would now take a very quick break. We'll be joined by our analysts to bring you further details on the story that made the front pages this morning. Please don't go away.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. We would now be moving straight into dissecting the issues that made the front pages this morning. And to do justice to these issues this morning is the editor-in-chief Dateline newspaper, Malan Nasrullah. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. As always, it's good to be here.
Thank you. When Ibrahim came into the studios today, he told me he missed whatever it was, whether it was his hunches or it was his head, that stopped him from coming out in brown. If not, we would have been looking the same. And so when I saw you, I said, okay, somehow, some spirit was speaking to everybody today to choose brown.
It would have been a brown show this morning.
That is, by the way. Moving on to the issue that seemed to have caught up with everybody yesterday, from the blues, from nowhere. The Apex Bank, by midday yesterday, came up with plans to redesign the major currencies. They advised three very critical reasons. One, they said because of improved technologies, we are beginning to see more and more counterfeiting, especially in our higher denominations, and that has been corroborated by security reports that they've received. The second reason that was adduced was that out of the 3.2 trillion that is in circulation as far as their record is concerned, 2.7, about 85% of that volume is outside the banks. In other words, so when they make decisions to mop up cash or increase cash in circulation, it really doesn't have effect because that decision is binding only on 15% of our total circulation. But three, and very important, was that they feel that those cash outside circulation has fueled or triggered or rather supported the activities of terrorism, financing, as well as other illicit funds activities that we have seen in our economy, which put it completely off the radar of both the central bank and security agencies. My question is taking long, but I am driving at a very important point. What they did not tell us, which the analysts are saying, is that this may be targeted at the fundings being used to thwart the 2023 election. What did you make of all of the things that the governor said yesterday vis-a-vis other analysts?
Well, he has given his reasons as to be expected. But, if you take a cursory look at some of the things that he said, you will find it difficult to understand how we'll be able to do all that. Like when you talk about checking the activities of kidnappers, for instance, they have always, floated with the times. That's the kidnappers. Sometimes they will not even ask for money. Sometimes they will they will ask you to actually bring a particular brand of motorcycle. So even with this, without the security agents actually checking on their activities, they will still find a way to remain afloat. What I actually see about all this is the fact that probably the views of President Buhari did not change even from his days as the military head of state. Because if you remember, I think in 1984 or so, we also had to change the colors of the currency, and then the same reasons were adduced, even though that time we were not having issues of kidnapping, at least not on this magnitude anyway. So if you are talking about that, then you will look at our policy, when it even comes to our own currency. For instance, how many of us still remember what our coins look like? We are supposed to have coins, but they are not in circulation. And then we are also talking about the need to do major of our transactions electronically. Have we been able to do that? So these are issues that the Apex Bank actually should have, explain to the public. And then how much is it going to cost Nigeria? Because right now we are talking about the fact that we don't have money. So how much is this going to cost the economy? And then if you juxtapose that, with our need for money in critical places, is this what we need at this particular point in time? And then if you are also talking about so many money outside the banking system, then I will tell you that most of this currency you are talking about, some of them are actually within the government cycle. If you go to government houses, they keep money in cash, and then you wonder what they are going to do with it. So what I will expect the central bank to do at this particular time is to make sure that nobody is shortchanged because of this. Because when we had this in 1984, so many people were affected, you know, because the time that was given was actually very short. So I see them maybe engaging with stakeholders to be able to, you know, do it in a way that it will not affect so many people.
All right. Well, this is a long discussion with different facets to it. So I think we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see how things unfold. Let's move slightly away from that and to something very, very concerning. I know it's something that's very dear to Sunday's heart. The fuel scarcity. It has. They said it was because of flood that we don't have fuel. Now the waters have receded, but we still don't have it. And we're getting reports that it's getting worse in Lagos and Kano. And marketers are jerking up the price now, blaming depots for that, placing the blame that NNPC depots do not have the product, so they have to go to private depots to actually get that, and the private depots are the ones who jerked up the price, and they cannot afford to sell. How do we get out of this?
Well, the NNPC should tell us that because that's one of their responsibilities anyway. But as it is, they have appeared incapable, you know, of running the petroleum industry. Like you said, we were told in the beginning that it had to do with the flooding in Lokoja, in Kogi State. Now the waters have receded. You know, the road is free, even though some motorists are still having challenges because of the destruction, you know, to the road infrastructure and things like that. But then it's like there are so many things that we are not being told, you know. For instance, if you say the private depots, where are they getting the oil from? Because as far as I can remember, I think the NNPC is like the sole importer of petroleum products in the country at the moment. So why should you allow maybe the marketers to be having a field day without you playing the regulatory role that you are supposed to play? Because when this continues to happen, it's actually you and I that end up being affected the most, because we have to we have to buy the fuel, we have to do so many things, you know, with the fuel. But now that, you know, we don't even know what is actually happening. So we don't even know when this is going to be over, because most of the reasons that they gave us in the beginning are actually beginning to fritter away. So I think the government needs to do more than this.
Interesting. In Nigeria, just about everything is a reason for something not to work. It started with the Russian-Ukrainian war, and then we moved on to something else. And for 5 months, we couldn't explain what exactly the situation was. For members of household, if you ever take the time to sort of collate the total amount you spend on fuel, whether for generator or for your vehicle, you begin to understand how much of a chunk or a percentage this crisis takes away from your disposable income. Moving on to other conversations that seem to have made a number of the front pages is the issue of the security alert. 1 minute, the DSS were responding that they are aware and there is no need for alarm and they are on top of it. The next minute, another government spokesminister comes out and denies in entirety, you know, this threat. And then the next minute, the US is elevating the threat to the level of asking citizens to evacuate. And before you know it, we have another drama from the FG saying America is also safe, they want to evacuate. Is this becoming a child's play? Shouldn't this really be a matter of concern? Because, I mean, in the last couple of days, we closed very late. Those days, you are still worried about the bits and pieces and bits of hold-ups here and there. This time, once it's 5 o'clock, everybody clears out of the city, you know, in response to the heightened fear. And why are we treating this with levity? Has the U.S. handled it badly? Do they not share intelligence with our own people? Or is there something we should know? What are you worried about the way this is, how messy this is becoming?
Yeah, certainly, because like you said, we shouldn't make it look like a tit for tat, because the US is saying this, and then we also have to respond I don't think that's the way to go. Like you mentioned, for the DSS, they wouldn't want to take like a political aspect to it. Maybe that's what the Minister of Information actually did. Because even in their own statement, what did the DSS say? They said, some of these things we have already said it, so we are on top of it. People should be calm and remain alert and what have you. What the US said, it's better late than never, like people will say. Now that they are telling us this, they didn't say it's really actually going to happen, but there is this risk. So they're telling their people to take precaution, which is something that we actually do not do in this country.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we will just allow people to
walk into danger.
And then in the end, we will say, if you make the mistake of telling people they may not even come out of their houses, it's better for them to remain at home than for them to actually run into a danger that they didn't even anticipate. But when you are sure, when you are like, you have all the information at your disposal, that you shouldn't, you should watch over, what's happening around in your surroundings and things like that, then good for you. Because so many people cannot go to the places that they used to go to, and because of things like this. And do we need actually the US coming out to say this for us to understand that there are actually security challenges all over the place? Believe me, if the newspapers are to report all the cases that are happening, we may end up with no space for any other story because there are so many things that are happening. So what the Nigerian government should actually do is to look at what the United States is saying. See the ones that they can act upon. The ones that they think are not significant, nobody is asking you to come out and tell us the way you have to react. You don't have to do that, because if you look at it now, after Nigeria, they are issuing the same thing in South Africa, which means it's something that is routine as far as the United States is concerned. Anytime they see things that, look somehow to them, they alert the people because they are accountable to their people, which is actually not the case in Nigeria. Sometimes, you just have to be your own government. You have to watch over your own security, make provisions for your own sustenance and things like that. It's like the government just exists to like exploit you the more. Because right now we are talking about trying to expand the tax net, without anything in return.
Tax poverty. Somebody said.
You can also see what Soludo is saying. He's reversing himself on the wheelbarrow taxing and all that.
Well, talking about tax regimes and what we do with these tax monies, I mean, the editorial on Daily Trust newspaper this morning actually touched on something that the recent floods brought to the fore. It's something we already knew, but the recent flood issues actually brought to the fore this issue of our road network. You have a situation whereby one bridge collapses somewhere and everything is at a standstill because that is the only road connecting places to each other. And most likely these bridges and these roads have been left abandoned and they have not been looked at, they have not been taken care of, they have not been properly maintained, and that is why they are in this particular state. Is there a need, just like the editorial said, to formulate a new approach to road maintenance in Nigeria?
I want to side with that point of view because we should know that the editorial for a newspaper, that's like its own opinion. And the newspaper, if you look at the people that it's actually serving, then you understand the strength of its opinion. Actually, we have not been able to manage our roads. Like we keep mentioning the need to have things like the way bridges, which we don't have at the moment. So people are just taking all sorts of loads, you know. All these articulated vehicles that you see on the road, nobody knows exactly the amount of weight, you know, that they are moving about with. So you can see the effect and impact on the roads. And there is nobody to tell them what to do. There is nobody to say, don't do this. If you take what is happening, you know, within our neighbors, like if you are going into Cameroon, for instance, the moment you step out of Nigeria, you have to use the weighbridge. If what you are carrying is beyond what their roads can take, you have to find a way of providing job for their small people. So this is something that our government should actually do, you know, so that the roads can be maintained for a significant amount of time, instead of just if you do new roads today, then in another 2 or 3 years you are
still doing the same.
That's not what we should be talking about. So I think it's a very good one that the Daily Trust editorial is actually talking about an issue as important as this.
Interesting. Moving on to politics, we are seeing discordant and continue with the PDP. Otom coming out to say, I won't work for Atiku, you beg me in private and tell lies about me in public. Mimiko is saying he would not betray Wiki and all of that. How much of this lingering disagreement, how much would this impact the chances of the PDP in your views?
The presidential candidate of the PDP is actually seeing, you know, all the setbacks. And I want to believe he's also looking at the best way to actually handle them. But looking at it from my own perspective, if people are coming out to say that they will not support you, the problem is they will try as much as they can to see that you don't succeed in the end. So that's why I think the presidential candidate of the PDP should actually worry. The ones that he can salvage to get back on board, he should try to do that. But then he should also know the ones that are like beyond
redemption.
You know, the ones that he, no matter the time that he's going to spend, he may not likely have their support. So he shouldn't allow that to stop him from reaching out to places where he needs to reach out to, because in the end, winning the election is the ultimate. And even the governors that are, or the politicians that are now coming out to say all these things, believe me, by the time they see that clearly this candidate is going to win, they will change their tunes. You know, they will change their dance step and things like that, because the hypocrisy, you know, in politics in Nigeria is just beyond imagination.
All right, well, all twists and turns there, and we saw the number of registered voters. Actually, the INEC has said we have like 93 million or so, and there's this cleanup that was done on the voters register and all that. Do you think that will have a major impact when it comes to the election itself?
Well, not much, because as far as I am concerned, I don't think we'll have up to 50% of that registered voters, you know, taking part in the 2023 election, because it has always been the case. You have 80 million, and then in the end, 26, 30, 31 million will be the ones to actually decide. But this should help politicians to know where they should channel all their energies, and because if, for instance, you keep hammering on a state that may not give you up to like 1 million votes, you know, honestly, you should look at the ones where you have leverage, where you can actually get the actual number. So it's good for politicians to decide, and even for the electoral body to actually make its plan, so that it's not caught unawares in the end, like maybe preparing for 10 million voters when in the end you may end up with a huge, turnout in the end. So I think this should give the politicians the chance to know where to target and things like that. And then for the people to also understand the power that they have and see how they can get the best out of it.
Interesting way to bring this conversation to a close, for the people to understand the power they have and ultimately apply these powers. As the politician will always say, or as political maxims will always say, power indeed actually rests with the people. If you are aware of how much power you have, then you can apply it in a manner that the governors will not be speaking for you and saying we will not. They're just one person at the end of the day. I hope political enlightenment and education gets to that level where we can truly take power back from these people and decide for ourselves the caliber of people who should lead this country on our behalf. We've been talking with the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper, Malam Nasrullah, who has provided us very insightful perspectives on the issues that made the front pages today. It's a pleasure to have you join us again. We hope to see you when next we call.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We will take a short break. We'll see you at the top of the hour with more interesting packages. Please stay with us.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS. Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
Welcome back. It's 8 a.m. in the morning, and it's a pleasure to have you stay tuned to us. This is Daybreak on Trust Television. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
Thanks for staying with us. Top of the hour, 8 a.m. Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
The airline at this hour. The Central Bank of Nigeria is to redesign the 200, 500, and 1,000 naira notes.
And other headlines are reading, the BVAS will change face of 2023 elections, says ex-Senate leader.
And court orders FG to return Nnamdi Kanu to Kenya.
And now the details. A federal high court in Umuahia on Wednesday ordered the federal government to return Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, to Kenya. This was the judgment delivered by Justice Evelyn Anyadike, also awarded Kanu the sum of 500 million naira in general damages, and Kanu prayed the court to redress his infamous unlawful expulsion or extraordinary rendition from Kenya by the federal government. The court referred to the Court of Appeal's judgment on October 13th in Abuja and granted all the 8 reliefs sought by Kanu, which bordered on extraordinary rendition. And the suit, which was filed in March, has the federal government, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, and President Muhammadu Buhari as respondents.
Moving on, a former leader of the Senate, Victor Udoma Egba, has thrown his weight behind the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, over its resolve to use the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, BVAS, and other technology during the conduct of the 2023 general elections. Udoma Egba, who spoke in Abuja when members of the APC Integrity Movement visited him at his residence, said the development would change the face of the 2023 election, expressing confidence that the APC would emerge victorious. He added that the 2023 election would be different from previous elections as technology would play a key role, saying that people have become very aware and are going to be making very informed choices.
And the Central Bank of Nigeria on Wednesday says it will redesign the 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes. CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, who disclosed this during a special press briefing in Abuja, said the new design and issues will be effective December 15th, 2022. While advising Nigerians to take old notes to banks for the new ones, Emefiele said the action was taken in order to take control of the currency in circulation. According to him, the bulk of the nation's currency notes was outside bank vaults, noting that the CBN will not allow the situation to continue. Emefiele informed that as of the end of September 2022, available data at the CBN indicated that 2.7 trillion naira out of the 3.3 trillion naira currency in circulation was outside the vault of commercial banks across the country and supposedly held by members of the public. Meanwhile, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has applauded the move by the Central Bank of Nigeria to redesign and reissue higher denominations of the Nigerian currency. Reacting to the development, the executive chairman of the EFCC, Abdulrashid Bawa, described the move by the Apex Bank as a well-considered and timely response to the challenges of currency management. He called on operators in the Nigerian financial services sector, especially deposit money banks and bureau de change operators, to work within the guidelines provided by the Apex Bank to ensure the seamless withdrawal of the old currency. Bauer, however, warned that the EFCC will monitor the process to ensure that unscrupulous players and currency speculators and their cohorts among the BDCs do not undermine the exercise.
We are now being joined by financial analyst Vincent Oshoma, virtually from Lagos, to provide more details on this report. Good morning, Mr. Vincent. Good morning, Mr. Vincent, if you can hear me. Good morning, Mr. Vincent, if you can hear me. We will take a short break. When we return, the show continues. Please stay with us.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
And now, moving on, the spate of insecurity in the northern part of the country has forced many schools to close and expose the adolescent population to social vices which negatively impact their development. Gender advocate at the 22nd Regular National Council on Women Affairs, who identified this as one of the major factors perpetuating the practice of early marriage, however, wants security and other safety measures to be put in place to encourage girl child to return to school. Trust TV's Aisha Saliu brings us the report.
The rising incidences of insurgency, kidnapping and banditry in the northern part of the country contribute to complex humanitarian crisis and have impeded the enrollment and retainment of the girl child in schools. This results in an increase in the number of out-of-school children. As such, parents send off their young female children into early marriage.
The educational status of a woman, of a girl, is what determines the economy of any country, not the number of buildings, because it affects maternal mortality, child mortality, the kind of nutrition, whether you give birth to children that can rule the country because they've been sound, they've been fed well. So a lot of things anchor on the girl child. And that girl child is also anchored on the level of her education. Until we have security and safety for schools of children, for children, it's going to be like almost the country is just going to go on a roller coaster.
Whatever we're doing, we have to ensure the security and well-being of these children because we don't want to lose them, to child marriage or, dropouts and so on, because we're also battling to see that, we keep our children in school.
Maybe one of those is fencing schools, having security guards, people that are looking out to see what is happening, even communities themselves.
This menace calls for the need for collaborative efforts on the part of traditional, religious, security institutions and community levels towards ensuring the provision of an enabling and safe environment for schools. The Development Research and Project Center, under the Partnership for Advancing Women Economic Development, initiated a program to cater for education in emergencies.
The traditional institution, they hold a strong voice. They're bridging gap between the parent, the community, government, and the service providers in ensuring they change the negative norms and perception, enroll more girl child into school, ensure convolution, transition to others so that we can bridge gap in the issue of human resource for health, girl child, human resource for health, and human resource for education.
We taught our pupil, the student, how to safeguard themselves whenever there is an attack. We tell them the early warning strategies for them to be alerted on their way going to school or on their way coming back to home, or even when they are in the school. How can they prevent themselves?
Stakeholders say advancing girl child education is one of the best solutions to reverse the trend of rural poverty and create improved maternal health, among others. Aisha Salihu, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Welcome back. I understand we now have Mr. Vincent Oshoma joining us virtually from Lagos to discuss the CBN move to redesign the Naira. Good morning, Mr. Vincent.
Good morning. Hope you can hear me now. Good morning.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Yesterday, we were taken, I wouldn't say we were taken aback, we were taken by surprise, if you like, by the Apex Bank with its announcement to redesign the Naira, and it advanced a number of reasons why that had become important, from counterfeiting to the volume of money outside the vaults of the commercial bank, and of course to also address what it calls unfit notes and terrorism financing. But more importantly, we have seen Aladis raise critical question around how much this project would cost this country, because you know how expensive it is to mint new Naira notes, and whether this was the appropriate time to bring this kind of policy on board. What's your take on this perspective?
Like you mentioned, the CBN is actually within its path to bring out a change note in circulation, right? But it has to do with people looking, like you mentioned, the issue of the cost. And also in terms of timing, I think it's there's not much problem with timing, looking at the issue of to 8 years, but it has not been done in the last 20 years. And also looking at the fact that the current of the bank votes, in circulation out of bank votes is quite high. So the CBN cannot hold its hand and watch this. They have to do something about it. But like you mentioned, the issue of the cost, at what cost will this project be? If there's some level of transparency from the CBN by talking about the cost of a project, I think it will help in allaying money at this moment. You have to spend it wisely.
All right. Well, at this point, the average Nigerian is actually plagued with a lot of things. We have very high inflation rates, prices of commodities skyrocketing in the market, fuel scarcity, and whatnot. And at this time, we're actually looking towards the government to hear something that will truly impact their lives. I mean, directly impact their lives. This policy now of redesigning the Naira notes, is there any direct impact on the Nigerian person? that is going to have on the Nigerian right now as it is?
Yes, from the angle of the CBN, CBN's monetary policies, it affects the effect of its policies in trying to control the money supply, because one of the issues that money supply actually is affect their policies, and also we'll also talk about the impact of this money that is outside the bank on the system. Means that the CBN that is supposed to be controlling the system, the banking system and the financial system with monetary policies, will have not much power. The power will be in the hands of those people that have this. So that's the area that they are looking at. I mentioned, I think not knowing the exact cost of it, I think, is an issue that people continue to raise. But if the CBN is clear,
Thank you very much, Mr. Vincent, for providing us those perspectives.
Compared to the
Thank you for providing this perspective. We will continue to keep tabs on development around this. This is going to happen over the next 100 days. We will continue to bring our viewers, to point with regards to changes and whatever is happening in the polity. Thank you very much again, Mr. Vincent Oshoma, who joins us from Lagos. We will now take a quick break. When we return, we'll be ready with our second discussion. Please stay with us.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
To which that's so cut.
documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. For quite a while now, the skyrocketing price of liquefied petroleum gas, known as cooking gas, and its crushing effect on Nigerians have been in the front burner. Major stakeholders in the sectors allege that importers, depot owners, and the federal government are complicit in the continuous rise of LPG prices through price fixing, reintroduction of value-added tax, exorbitant landing cost and levies, as well as dollar scarcity and devaluation of the naira. Based on findings, naira devaluation and foreign exchange scarcity to a great extent have adversely affected LPG pricing, which is denominated in dollar. Let's look at the implication of this on the means of livelihood, and to do justice to this, we are joined in the studio by the Chief Executive Officer of Ultimate Gas and the former National President of the Nigerian Association of Liquefied Petroleum Gas Marketers, NALGAM, Alhaji Awalu Ahmed Ilu. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Alhaji, it's been over a decade that I've known you. It appears that you have put a stop on age. I don't know what button you pressed, but you've continued to look young. You probably would tell us that secret in the face of all the economic turmoil that we seem to be going through as a country. But it's a pleasure to have you join us in the studio this morning.
Thank you very much.
The issue of LPG seems to have defied the understanding of ordinary Nigerian. On the one hand, members of your association and people like you, and even the government, are calling for increased usage of the LPG, and that we have more potentials as a country in this area. On the other hand, directly, we are putting out policies that seem to impede on this increased usage of this product. What exactly is the problem with this frequent rise in the price? Because I know that you have argued in the past that LPG is cheaper than firewood. Are you still maintaining that viewpoint?
Yeah, it's still cheaper than firewood if you calculate how much it will cost you for the same value of energy from firewood or from LPG. You find out that LPG is much cheaper.
But is that sustainable? I mean, with regards to all this issue, look at what the average Nigerian household has to cope with. I mean, today in Abuja, it's running into 4 or 5 weeks that we have struggled with fuel. That is from your disposable income. Rising costs, inflation across all that. For the rate at which these fluctuations and rising prices, I mean, in the space of 1 year, we have gone from about 4,800 for 12 kg to about 11 or 12,000. Do you think at this rate we will ever get to that desired target of the kind of usage you want to see in the Nigerian space?
Well, like you rightly mentioned at the beginning of this program, there has been a lot of efforts to grow the consumption because Nigeria has been so dependent on firewood and kerosene, which were heavily subsidized kerosene at that time, and firewood, which resulted in deforestation program. And if you could recall, 15 years ago, our total annual consumption was about 50 to 60,000. And that is when Nigeria LNG intervened and began to address the issue of supply. Over the last 15 years, we have grown the market to almost 1.2 million liters annually. So you could see a tremendous improvement, even though given our capacity to produce LPG and given our population, we are still among the least per capita consumption. Yes, while the consumption has grown, unfortunately, the supply has not grown to that magnitude. So there's always issue of demand and supply.
Forces.
If Nigeria LNG has committed about 450,000 metric tons per annum, and NPC, out of their equity from ExxonMobil, they dedicate about 84,000 tons annually. And of recent, there has been a lot of local producers that are processing gas and they get LPG, like NPDC, Kwale Hydrocarbon, Gas Train, and quite a number of them. If we put all of them together, they are not up to 50% of the total demand. So the remaining 50% or more comes from importation. And as you are rightly aware, the price of LPG is associated with the price of crude oil. So anytime the crude oil moves up, the LPG also goes up. And then the issue of dollar rate issue of government inconsistencies, to be honest with you, because there is no proper coordination within the government, while Ministry of Environment or Ministry of Petroleum is looking at it from the environmental perspective, from health perspective. Maybe Ministry of Finance is looking at it purely from revenue aspect of it, because when government is looking for revenue, they always look at the easiest area where they can tap in and then raise government revenue. So this has bring in a lot of challenges. You know, sometimes some incentives are given which supposed to enhance the supply, and then after a while another setback will come in, and then government will introduce certain policy. But I think now all hands are on deck, and there are a lot of efforts between all the various ministries and government departments to try to see how this can be resolved, so that at least the price of LPG will be affordable. Just like you rightly mentioned, almost price of products in Nigeria has almost tripled, if not in some cases doubled, in some cases tripled. And the income of Nigerians, whether as a businessman, whether as a civil servant, maybe a lot of people don't even have increase. In fact, a lot of people have lost their jobs. So it's the same little resources you have that you have to share to all these daily demands. So definitely these are the issues. And I'm happy to say Nigeria LNG has made a pronouncement that all their butane will be dedicated to the domestic market. But unfortunately, because of the oil theft in the Niger Delta, and more so that all the LPG we get is through the associated gas, which is derived from processing of gas from the wells that are producing crude oil, and a lot of those wells have not been producing optimally because of fear. If you even produce and put in the pipeline, you can get maybe 50%, 60%. So that has really affected the pit stock to most of these gas processing plants, which has also affected the supply. So the only option to be able to complement the domestic supply is through import, and the import to even get the dollar, to even get the vessel, you know, and they're all double handling. And of recent now, because of this flood, even the logistics, sometimes it takes like maybe 10 days for a truck, when loaded with LPG, to reach Kano, because the roads are very terrible. All the routes are in bad shape. So many accidents. Sometimes for 2-3 days, there will not be any movement because some trailers have fallen down. And so these are some of the challenges, but I hope and I believe that maybe with time you will be able to overcome most of these challenges.
So you raised quite a number of issues, and what I've been able to glean from it is one of the fundamental problems is that we have a supply issue.
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
And that is what is mostly affecting the price as it is right now. So what are we doing? I think my question is two-pronged right now. What are we doing to address the current supply issue right now to make sure that we have the domestic capacity to satisfy the demand that we have, so that hopefully the price will come down? And what do we need to do if what we're doing now is not working?
To be honest, the sector has been neglected for a very long time. In fact, those of us who have operated for a very long time have been very resilient, you know. With very little support, we are able to strive. A lot of investment has gone into LPG. Today, we are boosting of more than 10 coastal depots. Unlike in 2007, there was only one belonging to an NPC. We have thousands of bottling plants across Nigeria. I don't think there's any state that doesn't have bottling plants, unlike before. We have so many road trucks, etc. So in terms of investment, the operators have done quite a lot. But a lot of it really has to be lack of full collaboration with government to understand what areas need to be addressed, where we need to focus. And until about 3 years ago, when government came up with an incentive whereby importation of LPG equipment and appliances was streamlined, and some kind of incentives were given in terms of import duty and others. So that has helped a lot in growing the market. But really, we have to improve the domestic supply. And unfortunately, Nigeria produces almost 3 million tons of LPG. Most of it is being exported. A lot of it has to do with logistic issues. You know, sometimes the spec issues, like ExxonMobil produce quite a lot of LPG, which is called LPG mix. But all of it is being exported because the logistics of bringing it from Escravos to Lagos or to other ports is quite challenging. The vessel availability, etc. In fact, what even grow the market is because of the intervention of Nigeria LNG. We have a lot of policies, cabotage law, size of the vessel, you know, that will be shuttling the receiving capacity. I think in Apapa today, the maximum tonnage of a vessel that you can bring is about 13,000 tons. Anything above that, you can't even berth, unless the vessel has a very low draft, because most of the waters are shallow, you know. And for you to be able to get 14,000, 15,000 metric tons of vessel to load from any of these facilities, which is designed for very massive vessels, maybe 45,000 tons, because it was originally designed for export. So these are some of the challenges, you know. And I believe now, with the difficulties we are facing through, I think different departments of government and ministries are collaborating to see how best this can be addressed. And it will also be an avenue for increasing employment level in the country.
Just yesterday, Emile Carey was saying that the Nigerian market has the capacity to absorb 10 million metric tons. We are doing just 3 at the moment. You have mentioned a number of issues around this thing. But one thing that the Nigerians find completely difficult to understand is why the portion by the LNG, which is just about 50% or 40% of local capacity, is also priced in dollars. I mean, the marketers take this, and we don't know the difference between what was imported in terms of pricing from what is locally available. Can you try to make us understand why this is so? I mean, how do we produce something as a nation and yet we can't seem to differentiate it in terms of pricing with what happens at the international market?
Well, to be honest now, the price we are paying is the import price, because for you to be able to import, you have to push the price up so that you'll be able, even if you're not making any reasonable margin, at least for you to break even, because most of the big terminal operators have made massive investments, and you can't keep your facilities dry. In fact, there are a lot of depot owners who cannot even get from Nigeria LNG for so many logistics issues, which has to do with draft, with safety, and so many other things. So for you, in a situation where you are producing only about 40%, for you to be able to meet up with the remaining 70%, 60%, you have to push up the price to that level, so that if somebody gets, for instance, from Nigeria LNG, which is at a much lower rate, you know, and he sells below the current market price, nobody will import. And if nobody will import, then the price will also shoot up. So the only way to solve this issue is to increase the domestic supply. And that is the only issue. If not, if you have to rely on import, and import now is becoming more and more difficult. And like I said earlier, unfortunately, we don't have proper coordination within the government cycles. Not only this government, all governments, the previous one, the one before that, the person in Ministry of Transport or in NIMASA, he's looking at it from his own point of view. You need to have cabotage, you need to have this, you need to have this. He doesn't look at it from the other point of view. The person in finance is looking at it more from more revenue generation, you know. The environment person is looking at it from environmental perspective. So if there is a proper coordination and understanding and engagement of the operators, I believe that we have the capacity to address all these issues, and together we can solve the challenges and then see that at least the price of LPG gas has become reasonable.
Well, with the current trajectory of the increase in the price of gas now, and what the things that are being done now to address that issue, and of course what we need to do and where we're heading to, is there any hope that the price of gas might come down within the foreseeable future and be more affordable than it is right now? Because a lot of people truly cannot afford it.
I don't think so. It might reduce reasonably with some little naira and kobo, but I don't see it coming down drastically. Because if we look at even the logistics, now at 1,800,000 per truck to transport from Lagos or to Abuja, the transporter is not breaking even. If you look at the cost of tires, cost of spare parts, and how long it takes you to come to Abuja or to go to Lagos or to go to different parts of the country. Anytime a truck did a complete cycle, you have to maybe change all the springs because the roads are in a very bad shape. I hope one day you can have a tour of the situation in the road around Makwa area and see, you know. In fact, sometimes for 2-3 days, there will not be any movement. You know, it's really pathetic, you know. But thank God, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, in collaboration with NNPC, I think they are trying to address those vital roads that link off all the different depots for the easy transportation of general goods and petroleum products. But really, the issues are very complex, and to be honest, I don't think it's coming down
anytime soon.
Anytime soon.
Just feeding into what Ibrahim has said, we have seen the government make a very bold move to address this logistic with the AKK project. I'd just like to get your perspective. How much do you think that infrastructure would impact on this issue of logistics and supply?
Okay, yes, the AKK is going to be really a game changer in the most particularly in the area of power generation, and maybe other petrochemical industries. Unfortunately, we don't use much. In fact, we use LPG, which is different from the natural gas that AKK is going to transport. But also, the natural gas can also be piped and they may be into homes if that stabilizes, and that can replace the LPG. But there are two different products. You know, the AKK will address maybe the power sector. In fact, there are some producers now that are producing, like in Port Harcourt, and transporting the same natural gas in a liquefied form to industries in Kano and other parts of the country. So AKK will really help in improving the power generation capacity, and it will also bring about a lot of petrochemical fertilizer plants along the route, and possibly in a longer time, maybe people can begin to pipe it, just like it's been done all over Europe and the US. But it's a long-time thing because the market is not even there. We are talking about 1.3 million tons all over Nigeria, which is very, very small. And like you said, the GMD of NNPC mentioned, Nigeria can consume 10 million comfortably, given our population, you know. So in terms of per capita consumption, we are still lagging behind, even behind those who don't even have the LPG, who have to rely on importation. Places like Senegal and other countries around West Africa and other parts of Africa.
Well, you made mention of the fact that we do produce LPG locally, and some of it is actually exported.
Yes.
But if we're not getting enough to fulfill the domestic demand, then why take it outside?
Yeah, that's why I said logistics issues.
So it's cheaper for you to take it out than to distribute it within?
There was time. It's cheaper to import than to even buy from Nigeria. Because if you are buying from outside the country, you buy the correct size of vessel. For instance, you can buy a 15,000-ton vessel that will come straight from Europe or from the US to come and drop for you. If you are picking from any of the facilities, you know, we have a mismatch. The platform, because when all these projects were conceived, Nigeria LNG, ExxonMobil, NGL, Chevron gas project, they were designed for export because as at that time, Nigeria's refinery can produce enough LPG for the country. So it was designed to export all the products. So they were designed for a much bigger vessel. And then for you to load, at the port load, you must have a reasonable size of vessel. And if you load it now, you can't enter where you're going to discharge. Those are the kind of mismatch. And these are the only thing that really it has to be addressed specifically to look at, for instance, what are the challenges? How do you overcome it? But everybody now is doing his own, from his own viewpoint, and he will insist on that is what he wants to do. And we are only operators. We take the easiest way out of it and try to see how we can make use of it.
But talking about this challenge within the context of what we can do to move forward, how much is the recently passed Petroleum Industry Act, you know, supposed to help address some of these lack of coordination and direction, especially on the part of regulators and other stakeholders in the industry? Is there any impact that is supposed to have on this?
Well, I think now the PIA is just being implemented now gradually. Unfortunately, the most important aspect of it, which is the regulation, has not been implemented. And even today, to be honest, if you can buy petrol at 165 or at 200, you know, you can compare it with LPG, which is almost over 300 per liter, or 300 plus. So definitely there's no incentive. And so part of the PIA, the whole concept is to regulate the industry.
So you are arguing that the continuous subsidy to petrol is a disincentive for the growth of the gas sector?
Yeah, it is. And secondly, too, under the previous act, the Minister of Petroleum has a lot of power, which is not the case with the PIA. But it's still a new thing. We're beginning to, you have seen of recent where there has been so many controversies over the powers of the minister vis-a-vis the power of the regulator, which is the upstream commission. You know, so it's something new. It will take maybe like 1 year, 2 years to be able to get used to it. I strongly believe by the time we fully implement the PIA, definitely the industry will grow and most of the other issues will be addressed, and the bureaucracy involved will be minimized, which is the most important thing. And then you have one regulator, unlike what to obtain now. You have so many people involved in
the space
in doing one thing, you know. So the PIA will go a long way, and when fully implemented, and I believe we are doing it gradually. And the commission and the authority are getting well established. In fact, they have finished distributing the staff. They have almost integrated most of the various departments, like the midstream, downstream. You have so many agencies that were put together. Even for that to take off fully, it takes a very long time, long process. You know, even their processes have to be streamlined. And the same thing with the upstream commission. So I believe that with time, maybe towards the end of next year, it will have taken full route into the system, and I believe that will bring a lot of improvement.
All right, you touched on the issue of deregulation, and that it hasn't actually been implemented, and it's the main thing. When people hear the word deregulation, the first thing that comes to their mind is how this affects price, and usually they just think of it as it will be an upward take in the price of everything, because if you allow market forces to deal with it, most likely it's not going to be something that's going to be at a reasonable price. But isn't that what is happening now? Because isn't it market forces that are determining exactly the price of gas at the moment?
No, you see, the major issue is if you produce certain thing at certain rate, whatever name you call it, and you are selling below that cost, now petroleum products, crude oil has been sold in dollar, for instance. And because it's been sold in dollar, you have to base your costing in that. If you look at the current cost from what they are saying, I don't know how much it is today because it changes every day. Maybe landing per liter, petrol will not sell maybe less than 400 naira. But now because you are selling it at 165, maybe 200, for a Niger citizen or for a businessman in Niger, Burkina Faso, it's better for him to buy from Nigeria at 350 naira. It's still cheaper than if he's to import. If you go to Niger, all these are what's the African cost. You look at how much their price is, almost double or 3 times our own. So definitely there are incentive for smuggling, for black market, whether you call it smuggle, whatever it is. And that's why our consumption is so maybe high. 60 million liters, 80 million liters.
100 million, whatever.
But by the time it becomes expensive, a lot of people have to think twice before they use their vehicles. 2, there's not any incentive to take it out of the country like now, LPG. In fact, we are selling more expensive than Nigeria because Nigeria is subsidizing LPG. In fact, sometimes people even go and smuggle gas from Niger in cylinders because they can sell higher. So definitely our consumption will drop drastically, and then there's no incentive for you to take it outside anywhere. But where you don't do that, we always continue to do that, and then government has to look for money anywhere. Yes, it's very sensitive. It has a lot of political implication, and any government, in fact, all governments have attempted and they couldn't do it. So it's not only peculiar to this government. It's a very, very serious issue, but it's something that has to be done because we can't afford it, and it is put in. And because of that too, nobody will make that huge investment. It's only those who take the risk to say, okay, yes, let me invest because I know it will come, and then when it comes, I'll take advantage of it. Like even the Dangote refinery, that's why he has to do it at the export-free zone. So because internally, if there are challenges, he can export his product. But if the market is deregulated, or if government is going to pay him subsidy, he can sell. And
quickly before we let you go, we're running down on time. We have also seen, well, the government has declared this a decade of gas, and you have spoken to some initiatives that they are driving a different sector. One of them is the CNG. The whole talk about moving from petroleum to gas as a cleaner source of fuel, maybe cheaper if you like, and all of that. This whole problem with the LPG and that we are seeing, whether it's logistics or bureaucracy and all of that, is that the reason why we are finding it difficult to also get off the ground with the CNG project, despite its laudable benefit to the individual user?
That can never take off until you deregulate the petroleum.
So we should not look forward to gas-powered vehicles.
I'll give you an example. I sell LPG. I have an LPG vehicle, but it's not economically for me to buy LPG at this current rate and power my gas with it. particularly if I can get, even at 200 naira, it's cheaper for me to use petrol. So even me that sell LPG, it doesn't make economic sense. And truly, nobody will buy. Even countries where they transit to CNG and for auto gas, it was done under regulation by force. You can't drive petrol car. But if I'm free to drive petrol car, and petrol is between 165 to 200 per liter, and I think CNG at the current price is more than 200, 300, and with the level of investment, and you don't have even, you won't even have buyers. You won't even have buyers. And no matter how good it looks, no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how environmentally friendly it is, it doesn't make economic sense. And for us business people, our number one priority is the economic sense of it, you know.
Exactly.
So even if you have CNG plant, nobody will buy to power his vehicle, you know. But now look at the power sector, because diesel has gone to 750, 780, 800. A lot of people are using CNG to power their a lot of estates now have independent power plant, particularly in Lagos. Industries in Kano are buying LNG, still cheaper than diesel. But if diesel was being sold for 250, 300, there was no incentive for you to do so. So really, the regulation of petroleum price, particularly petrol, will go in a long way to open up these other sectors. But I know it's a very difficult thing, and the labor has to be engaged, and the most convenient time has to be found. But it has to be done. It has to be done. Yeah.
The most convenient time has to be found, and it has to be done. Those are the words of Mabu from our guest today, Malam Awal Ahmed Ilu, who has taken us through the various complexities that has practically held the liquefied petroleum gas sector aground, whether it is the vagaries of foreign exchange or government policies or logistics, as he has pointed out. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. We will continue to keep tabs on the development in this sector, and when the need arises, we hope that when we call on you again, you will be available to provide more enlightenment around this sector. Thank you very much once again for making it to the studio.
Thank you very much. You're most welcome.
This is where we draw the curtain on today's conversation. It's been very illuminating around the various issues that we have had to look at. But let's do this again tomorrow, where we'll bring you even more interesting perspective from the nation's polity. I am Sunday Michael Ogun.
Thanks for joining and staying with us on Daybreak today. Tomorrow is another one. Stay with us on Trust TV for more. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.